What's going on, everybody? This is Brandon Hill, and today I'm going to walk you through the live performance techniques that I used on the recent video that I posted. It was this techno song that I made while I was out at the park in Brooklyn and then did a little live performance. Even if you're not into techno, I think that me breaking down what I did in this video can maybe spark some ideas and help you with performing live yourself. So with that, let's get into it. Okay, first let's reference the video. Let me move through. This part of the video is where I build the beat, and this is the live performance here. Let me go back to Maschine. What I did for this is I used one of the packs from this expansion kit here, Liquid Energy, and I built this beat using a lot of the sounds on there, and I also replaced a few sounds such as the snare and the open hi-hat. Once I built up this pattern, I searched for vocals on Splice to see what could sound good with it. I found this pattern here. Let me solo it.
Dance, life,
and here's with the beat. Okay, once I had this, I was ready to move on to the live performance part. Before I start the live performance from the beginning of the song, I want to use the lock button here to lock in the sounds that I want on the drop. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit lock, and it's going to lock everything in Maschine how it is. Once I start changing things and start the live performance, I'm going to progress the song, eventually get to the build up and the drop. And when I get to the drop, I'm going to hit this lock button, and it's going to turn everything on for an impactful drop. So that's what happens in this part of the video here. So if I skip towards the drop, so right before the drop, you're going to see that I'm going to hit the lock button. Right here.
Let's go.
So let's go back and just demonstrate how I could do that with the lock button. So let's say I want all of these elements playing, which you see here in the software. I'm going to hit lock. That is going to lock everything here. So I could start muting things. Okay. And then if I hit this lock button again, let's pretend it to drop. I'll wait to the end of this next bar here. So you want to time it. Okay, so that's the lock button. So the first thing I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to hit the lock button. One thing you'll notice here is that I have the snare muted. When I built this pattern, I knew I was going to use this snare sound during my buildup. So if I take this off and I play this pattern, it's going to sound weird because you're going to hear the snare roll. I've recorded the snare roll and I muted it because when I am performing this song, I'm going to bring the snare roll in and unmute it. So I'll keep that there muted. In the mixer, I'm also going to turn it down. So if I unmute this again, I turn it down so you pretty much can't hear it, because when I unmute this and bring in the snare roll, I'm going to gradually bring up the level to increase the anticipation and buildup of the drop, okay? Back to where we were, I'm going to hit the lock button. With the lock button pressed, now I'm going to start thinking of how I want to start my song. Usually I'll experiment muting and unmuting things. For this one, I'll just skip right to it. So I'd solo this bass here. So I have these two bass elements, right? And then I have the vocal. One thing I did on the vocal, which is a technique you could use on any element you really want to bring in, is I'll go to my vocal plugin. I added this filter here. So let's see what this sounds like. You can hear the filter closing. So now I could start off this beat like this and start to bring in this filter, or open up this filter. Okay, so let's look at that happen in this video here. Here's me unmuting the bass. The filter's closed on the vocal. I'm just leveling out my bass right there. Now I'm starting to bring in the vocal with that filter.
Control, dreams, let's go, dance.
Okay, I let the beat play for 8 bars, and then you could see I use unmute to bring in another element. And when you're performing live, you want to think of it as an arrangement. So you could bring elements in and out every 8 to 16 bars, and you bring these things in and out to progress the beat and to change things up, especially with a repetitive beat like this. We want to try to add some variety. So I have this going.
Dance. Life.
Let's pretend I open up this filter,
Dreams. Dance.
open it up.
Life.
I'm going to progress the beat by unmuting
Dreams.
this here.
Dance.
Okay?
Life.
And let me show you on the screen here. So now I let this run. Okay? Let me just unmute this right now. Next element we have is this perk here, which you'll hear me start to bring in. As I'm letting this play, I'm going to go to the mixer and I'm going to bring this down. Because once I introduce this and unmute it, I'm going to use the leveler to bring it into the mix. Let me mute that. You'll see that aspect in this part of the video.
Let's go. Dance.
So I bring it in. I'm starting to bring it up with the level.
Control. Dreams. Dance.
I'm doing this to gradually transition the element in. I like using the filter and raising the level to introduce an element gradually rather than just having it all of a sudden be in the mix full volume. Okay? So
Dance.
we're here.
Life. Control.
I'm going to unmute this.
Dance.
Let me just let it go through 8 bars.
Life. Control. Dreams.
Then I'm going to
Dance.
unmute that,
Control.
bring it up.
Dreams. Dance. Life. Control.
Okay, so before that 8 bars ends, we're going to move on to the next portion. So now we're going to start to get into the buildup. And this is where I'm going to bring the snare roll in. So you'll see me here unmute the snare roll and I'll start bringing the level up on that.
Dreams. Let's go. Dance. Life. Control. Dreams. Dance.
Okay? So I'll press play, I'll unmute. Let me just in my mixer go to my snare. Press play.
Dreams. Let's go. Dance. Life.
I'm going to build this up for 8 bars.
Dreams. Dance. Life. Control.
Before that ends, let's move on to the next port. Now I have this bass sound here. And to add to the buildup, I'm going to come to the plugin and affect this filter right here. So I'll bring up the cutoff. And when I hit lock, remember, it's going to bring anything that I adjusted back. You'll see that here.
Life.
And I'm going to let the snare roll continue at the level it was at because, you know, I can't work on both of these two things at the same time.
Let's go. Dance. Life. Control. Dreams. Dance. Life. Control.
Okay, so I'm going to press play and demonstrate this. So let's pretend I'm there. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to let this go 8 bars again. Okay, let me pause it there. We're at about after 5 bars, almost 6. So now we get to the pre-drop, and this is where the beat comes out, and usually you have something like a sound that you'll hear in this, or you would have a drum fill that leads you into your drop. So what I'm going to do, I have these elements. I'm going to wait until about the last bar, and you kind of just feel this out based on the vocal. So while I was doing this, I was almost too late because I kind of forgot about it. But right when I hear control, I'm going to hit solo and I'm going to solo that bell sound. You'll see that happen here. Everything's building up. I'll hit solo, okay?
Control. Dreams. Let's go.
Okay, so that leads us into our drop. And let's just continue. Remember on the drop, I'm going to hit lock.
Dreams. Let's go. Dance.
So I'll press play. I'm going to hear control. I'm going to solo that sound and then hit lock.
Control.
And then lock.
Let's go. Dance.
Okay?
Control.
That's how you perform everything from the start to the drop. Now we just let the song play. And in between 8 bars or so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute this kick. I'm going to mute this ride right here. So if it's playing like this, That's what it sounds like when it's muted. And I'm going to do that because I want to separate the first 8 bars from the second 8 bars of the drop, so you see that. Just see me do it right here. Okay. In many house songs or dance songs, producers will use a high pass filter right there. I just took out the kick altogether and let that play through. Again, it's just going to be a mute. And one thing that you saw there, you kind of have to time this right, because if you hit the kick too late, you're going to miss that first kick when it plays. So watch if I do it too late. It's going to sound weird because that kick doesn't start. See? The timing has to be right. You have to hit it right before the pattern restarts. There you go. All right, let's continue with this. We're going to go into a breakdown soon after this next 4 bars. Okay, so we go into the breakdown. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start muting a lot of the elements that I want to take out. And before I mute, I want to make sure that I hit the lock button again. Make sure that's unmuted. So before you hit the lock button, of course, you want to have all your elements that you want in the drop. So I'm going to hit lock. Let's pretend we're going into the breakdown here. I'm going to mute the kick and some of these elements. Here we go. So now we're into the breakdown, and we're just going to repeat what I did to start the song. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to start bringing elements in. I'm going to go to the mixer and make sure my snare is down. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in the snare. Now we're going to open up this filter. I'm going to get ready to solo. And then hit this lock button. Okay, and that's everything that I did here. It's nothing too crazy here. I just had one pattern, and you can see I pretty much used mute and unmute and then the lock feature for this live performance. Of course, there are other techniques. For example, I didn't use any lock states, but one thing you could use the lock state for is to have one lock state that's your drop, and then you could have one lock state that is your breakdown, for example, and you could switch between those. Or you could have a lock state where your snare roll is silent, and then a lock state where your snare roll is at full volume. You could go between those and let your snare roll build that way. These are just the methods that I used on this particular live performance. And if you want to know about more live performance techniques, I have a video which is on my channel that'll go through 6 of them, I believe. Hopefully this could teach you something new, or at least spark some ideas that you could use in your live performance with Maschine. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll start making these tutorials frequently again. See you on the next one.